Welcome back to my channel, Barter Hordes. My name is Robert. Technically, this is a Friday Reads video, but it's Sunday, so I'm a little bit late. As many of you may know, I was out of town last week at BookExpo America in New York City. The first part of BookExpo runs from Tuesday through Friday, which is the trade show portion of the event. It's where publishers come to meet with authors, and authors meet with agents, and all sorts of other interviews going on. Media are invited, librarians are invited, and so it's kind of like the big trade show. It's not open to the general public, but it's still a huge event and very, very, very crowded, even though the Javits Center in New York City is quite massive. It's my first year at BookExpo, and I enjoyed certain aspects of the show tremendously. Some of it just wore an old man like me out. 3 days of being around massive crowds of people is a little bit much for me. And then Saturday and Sunday, it switches to BookCon, which is open to the public. And a lot of it is, it seems to me, I didn't stay for that, it seems to me that that's more oriented towards the young adult and children's markets. And the publishers close off their booths where they were meeting with authors and librarians and things like that, and it just becomes a general trade show where readers and fans can try to pick up some advanced readers copies of books that are coming out either this summer or this fall. I did pick up way more than I intended to. I didn't really intend to pick up that many ARCs because I have so many books that the publishers have generously already sent me that I need to read, trying to get ready for next year's BookTube Prize, that I'm not sure when I'll fit in my haul from BookExpo. When that box arrives, I sent it back to my home via FedEx because it was too much to try to cram into my suitcase. When that book box arrives, I will do a short haul video just showing you the things I picked up. One of the things that I wasn't planning to do was to stand in the really long lines to meet individual authors. I was just interested in picking up certain books and talking to publicists from the publishers, the kinds of people that I email on a regular basis to get copies for the BookTube Prize. But when I saw that Fiona Davis was signing, Fiona Davis has been my literary crush for about a year now. I saw she was signing at about 11:30 or something like that. I forget exactly when it started. There are huge autograph bays all along one wall of the Javits Center where they have table after table after table of people signing. There's probably a dozen tables side by side, and then the long lines are filtered through those movie theater rope corridors. And when I saw that they were starting to form the line for Fiona Davis, it was still probably 45 minutes before her signing began. I was only going to be second or third in line. I thought, what the heck, my feet are already tired. I'll sit here on the floor and then stand in the line once they open the line. And so I was able to meet Fiona Davis and get her to sign a copy of The Chelsea Girls, which is her fourth novel. She's put one out every summer since 2016, and each of her novels is a story about a landmark building in New York City, but also the people in those landmarks' histories that have been so important. So she's done one about the Barbizon Hotel for Women. She's done one about the Dakota. She's done one about Grand Central Terminal and the art school that used to be in there. And her new one's about the Chelsea Hotel. And she's currently working on a fifth one that will be set in the New York Public Library. And so she does historical fiction tied to specific landmarks in New York City. And so I've had like I said, I've had a literary crush on her for a while. And then when I got to chat with her briefly, I have to admit my literary crush might have gone into a little bit of a real world crush. So if any of you live in New York City and know Fiona Davis, I could use a wingman here. But I did pick up her new one, The Chelsea Girls, and that will probably be the first one out of that box that I read once it arrives. So more on that later this week when my FedEx box arrives tomorrow or the next day. So I really enjoyed the show, but the real highlight of the show for me was spending time with some other booktubers and just had a great time that way. If I had been doing this show completely on my own, I probably would not have enjoyed it nearly as much. But I spent a great deal of time with Kendra Winchester. Kendra, as some of you know, was the first booktuber I met in person, even before I opened my channel. And I have since seen her at different events now 3 or 4 different times, and so we've gotten to be good friends, and we've buddy read a lot of books. And I also got to see her Reading Women podcast co-founder, Autumn Privet. Autumn doesn't do BookTube, but she manages the marketing side of the Reading Women podcast, and I met her also last year at the Decatur Book Festival, and she was there, and she was a delight to spend time with too. But the person that I met for the first time this trip was Russell of Ink and Paper blog. And so the 4 of us kind of spent time with each other, did our own thing, got back together, and we ate meals together and things like that. And it was a delight getting to know them. And Russell also introduced me to the Book Cougars podcast ladies, Chris and Emily. And so we chatted quite a bit. And in fact, they interviewed me just ever so briefly for one of their podcast episodes having to do with being at BookExpo. I think this is the 3rd time they've gone. So they're becoming experts at the situation. And it is quite a circus at times. But it's also exciting to be around so many people who love books as much as I do. And so that was fun. What that means, though, is I didn't read much over the last week. Between the switch from the quarterfinals to the semifinals of the BookTube Prize last weekend, and then my travel day and my 3 full days at BookExpo, and then yesterday's travel day back home, I've not read much this week. I did manage to finish 1 book. I finished Jodi Picoult's A Spark of Light, which was one of the books that was in the original field, the octofinalists in the BookTube Prize this year. It did not make the quarterfinals. I have about 9 of those books left to read, so that I've read all 48 of our original titles this year. And A Spark of Light is interesting. First of all, it shattered my views of the kinds of books that Jodi Picoult is stereotyped as having written. I mentioned this last week, I think, that I had always thought of her as a women's fiction writer, if you want to use the Goodreads term. But even though this deals with an issue that's of huge importance to women and should be to everybody right now, and that's about women's reproductive rights, this book is not women's fiction. It's just good fiction. It's the story of an abortion clinic in Jackson, Mississippi, the only one in the region. And there's an active shooter at the abortion clinic. And the man who is the hostage negotiator finds out during the negotiation that his own 15-year-old daughter and his sister is in the clinic and are held hostage. And his sister, in fact, has been shot and is wounded. You learn all this right at the very beginning, so I'm not giving anything away. And so the book goes through the whole experience of the hostages. What's unusual about this book, and I think the thing that made it less of a fantastic read for me, is that Picoult tells the story in reverse chronology. That is, she starts at 5 p.m. towards the end of the hostage crisis. And then each successive chapter moves back an hour in time and starts filling in gaps leading up to the end of the hostage situation. And for the life of me, I could not figure out why she was doing this. And I haven't gone to read any reviews to find out. But what I think it does, unfortunately, is it lessens the suspense of the active shooter situation, because you get further and further and further from what you already know, and she's filling in the gaps of these different people who are involved. And that's interesting, but it comes at the cost of the suspense of the whole standoff. And I think that was unfortunate for me. One of the things it allows her to do, though, is there are some twists built into the story that she can hide and not reveal till the end by doing this reverse chronology. But I think she still could have worked in those twists by doing a straightforward linear narrative and then maybe working in some flashbacks. But she chose to do it for a reason. I'm just not exactly sure what the reason was, but that reverse chronological order, I think, weakened the narrative drive of the conflict for me a little bit towards the end. And so I enjoyed it, but I wasn't wowed by it. But I'm glad I read it. I'm glad I finally got a chance to read something by Jodi Picoult. I'd never read any of her books before. And that's the only book I finished this week. The 3 books that I'm currently reading, and I didn't get much read in them this week at all, are my backlist title, which is really a classic, Charles Dickens' Little Dorrit, which is massive. It's 1,000 pages, and I have not read any of it this week. I'm reading that. I'm reading a new release that was just sent to me by the publisher, Myla Goldberg's new novel, Feast Your Eyes, which is her first novel since, I think, 10 years ago when the Bee Season came out. And it's a really interesting format. It is about a woman photographer, and it's a retrospective show about her life. And the long catalog that was published for the show is written by her daughter. But within that picture-by-picture commentary on the pictures and the artist's life are also excerpts from her own journals and excerpts from interviews the daughter has done with people that came in and out of her mother's life while she was in these various periods of her life. And it's a fascinating format. At first I didn't think I was going to like it, but I'm really growing to like it. And then the one I just started is another one of the quarterfinalists this year that didn't make the octafinals that didn't make the quarterfinals, and that's Meg Wolitzer's The Female Persuasion, which has been around and everybody's probably read it or heard about it ad nauseum. So I'm not going to say much about it, at least until I finish. But I enjoyed her book, The Wife, many years ago, but I missed the one in between, The Interestings. So this is the first one I've read by her in quite some time. So that's what I'm currently reading. I hope you've had a good week, a good weekend. I'm looking forward anxiously this afternoon to getting back to my chair or my couch and learning what reading's like all over again. And I'm kind of anxiously awaiting for my box to arrive from BookExpo so I can go through and remember what it is that I actually got and very quickly take you on a tour of those books. It's about 14 or 15 titles, so I'll have to be very quick. Otherwise, that book haul is going to be incredibly long, which I don't want to do. So I hope you've had a great time this week, this weekend, and I look forward to talking to you again in a few days. Bye, everybody.